Over the past 3 days, I've put in over 20 hours into Boss Key's most recent project and brand new Battle Royale experience, Radical Heights. It launched Tuesday on Steam, shortly after being announced as a free-to-play release. It's in early access, and they're planning to spend about a year in development, and then obviously looking to even develop the game beyond that. It was really out of the blue, but it was also really exciting. And it wasn't 100% out of the blue because Boss Key was teasing their new project, something they'd been working on for the last 5 months, right over on Twitter, and then just kind of poof, out of nowhere. It was like, oh, hey, it's coming to Steam tomorrow. Really unexpected, but really awesome. I was really looking forward to diving into it and giving it a go. I'm a huge fan of the Battle Royale genre. I love the fact that we have this sort of game mode that has exploded into its own genre. And honestly, we just don't have enough devs in the Battle Royale genre trying to do new and different things. There's a few, and I know for some reason a lot of people are like trying to cry out that it's saturated, but it's not. Number one, if you are ever curious as to how you can actually tell when something is actually saturated, you just need to look at the market. And considering Fortnite and PUBG are both extremely successful in making large amounts of money, it's very clear that the genre is far from saturated. We haven't yet reached World War II first-person shooter. That's saturation. And that tends to have a lot to do with how specific that theme was. The fact that we literally just had a very specific theme and a very specific environment straight driven into the ground. I mean, World War II and first-person shooter, there's only so many twists you can put on that. Battle Royale is quite different in that it is a very basic concept with some ideas that have been well established, but that can definitely be modified, tweaked, and innovated upon. And Radical Heights is looking to do that. In fact, it does that in quite a few ways, even just after 5 months of development. And that's probably the thing that's impressed me most about this game, is that while yes, it's obviously lacking in the audiovisual department, it's got some bugs, it doesn't look amazing because it was developed in 5 months, it's got a bit of jank, if you will, embrace the jank, as the Boss Key team has been saying. It has a really solid core gameplay loop, and it also feels really good to play. In fact, just about everyone who's tried it has been really taken back by how fun the game actually is. The gunplay is already relatively satisfying. Obviously, can use more refinement and more tweaking, but what's there just feels very fair, feels very exciting, and it also feels both accessible in that it's like easy to pick up and play it. You're not really dealing with the extreme recoil patterns that we have in a game like PUBG, but we're also not dealing with the randomness that we have in Fortnite with the bloom system. This feels like much more of a nice middle ground. It almost kind of reminds me of like Halo Reach with bloom in a way. You know, you still feel like you have a lot of control over the weapon and over how you shoot, because you do. You know, you can have controlled bursts and you can compensate for the recoil, but there are mechanics in the game that actually will tighten the spread of the weapon, specifically the game's adrenaline system. So increasing your adrenaline by getting shot at, kicking down doors, or eating burgers allows you to have a tighter weapon spread and also allows you to run a little bit faster. So that's one of many interesting mechanics that are sort of entangled into the Radical Heights BR experience that I quite enjoy. But again, really impressed with the core gameplay, and that really revolves around, okay, the gunplay, which we talked about, and also the game's movement system. So the game has no fall damage. It's very fast-paced, it's very open and allowing the player to experiment, to do ridiculous things like jump off of rooftops to punch people in the face. It actually encourages you to go on the rooftops of many of the environments, even in this early state. There's a lot of little sort of objects set up, and there are often rewards in the form of the loot boxes, which are prize packages that have random drops inside of them. Those are located throughout the game world, and they are one of many ways in which you'll be able to acquire loot throughout your time in a match of Radical Heights. So the game wants you to just like enjoy the mobility. It has this awesome dive roll mechanic that reminds me very much of the dive roll in Gears of War. So you can either do a dodge in any direction, or you can jump and do a long dodge roll, which allows you to jump through windows, again, across massive gaps. It just creates a very mobile Battle Royale experience that is not available on the market right now. And as someone who spent so much time playing Titanfall 2, I just found that really refreshing. Like being able to go into a BR and kind of have that same sort of availability for the mobility options that I get in a game like Titanfall 2. It feels really freeing, you know, just to be able to do that. And I don't know, just something about it just makes the combat really fun. Like, I've had some absurd moments just tucking and rolling out of the way and then whipping into a shotgun. And that theme is actually carried over into the game's BMX bikes, and trampolines. So the trampoline is a piece of equipment you can get that you can throw down. You can jump on it multiple times to gain more height. You can use that to get to rooftops, to flank people, to engage targets over walls and things like that. It's a very fun use, a versatile tool. And the BMX bikes, which are a bit jank right now, still allow you to have some absurd moments. You know, you can fly up on a bike, jump off of it, and shotgun a guy in the face like I did on stream yesterday. And it makes it so worth it. It's a BR game where kills come a little bit more easily, but getting to the final circle and winning is still just as hard and requires still just as much map knowledge and just as much, you know, like preemptive, on-the-fly problem solving, which I think is what makes any good BR a good BR. Like Fortnite and PUBG both have that, right? They're both games that ask you to solve problems that are often stacking the odds against you, and I think that's why a lot of people... part of the reason why a lot of people like BR, and Radical Heights totally nails that concept. Now, there's some more fine details that I did want to talk about with this game, things that, again, tie into the gunplay and the combat. So, the game is using a colored sort of RPG weapon drop and gear drop system, much like we see in Fortnite, except... rather than having like shield potions, we actually do have helmets and vests. Those helmets and vests go all the way up to level 5, essentially. The level 5, though, can only be obtained from specific high-level drops. So there's like a bicycle mission you can do where you have to race a BMX bike to a finish line, which is a really cool little thing. You know, the game has this whole game show concept integrated into it, and I really hope they can do more stuff like that to kind of reward the player for taking risks. Like, hey, go get this bike, drive it here, and if you do, we're going to give you a level 5, you know, helmet that you can't get anywhere else. The same thing for the weapons, though. Weapons also are tiered in that regard. The way it works with weapons is that the higher the tier, the more attachments that weapon version has. So you can get like an M16 bare bones gray, it's iron sights, nothing on it. You can get the blue version that has a like 4x scope or something like that, just an optic basically as it's set up in the game right now. Suppressor, you can get like an Uzi with a suppressor and an SMG. You can get like an AUG that has a suppressor, extended mag, plus the scope, you know, as the gold version. So earning higher tier weapons in this case doesn't just instantly make them, you know, more god tier, it just gives you more flexibility, more attachments on them. So rather than individually looting attachments like we do in PUBG, or just having weapons that have different statistics essentially like you do in Fortnite, you have basically a blending of those two systems. And again, with the armor, the higher level the armor, the helmet, the more shots you're going to take. The time to kill is relatively short, especially without armor. You can get shredded very quickly, but that plays such a huge part, I think, into the very clear and defined and what feels to be very fair, dare I say, after 20 hours of playing the game, you know, combat loop. So you basically look at a person's armor, you see the color of it, which is color coded to its tier, and then you draw that connection to what weapons you have and what weapons work best against that armor type, or what you might need to do to kill this person quickly. Like if they've got a big level 4 vest, then no, you don't want to try and shoot them in the chest with an SMG in a close quarters gunfight when you're wearing nothing, because you're gonna lose. You know, unless they miss all of their shots, you're going to lose. You're gonna want to find cover. You're gonna want to pick them off. You're gonna want to go for headshots, and you might want to equip something like an AK, you know, an M4 and the M14, for example, to do a little bit heavier hitting damage to really get past that armor. So that's something you have to constantly be considering. It's a very clear and defined system, and I like that the vests and stuff are kind of color coded. You know, like they're actually, it's a gold to match gold, purple to match purple. If they can really do that as the game gets polished and still, you know, make the stuff look cool, I think that'll be great. I love that clear and defined way to see what sort of a vest someone is wearing at any distance and at any combat speed. It really does blend well with the speed of the experience as a whole. You don't feel like you're trying to like pick out what they're wearing. You know, you just kind of can quickly identify it and then make a decision based on the weapons you have. And that's really cool. I like that the game, you know, really makes that... it makes it clear that that level of knowledge is valuable to you as an individual for winning gunfights and for long-term victory. Just right from the get-go, it's like if you play a lot of shooters, you play a lot of Battle Royale, you'll clearly be able to pick up on that, you know, very quickly pick up on that and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's important to me. I should build my knowledge around that so I can be more successful in combat engagements. Now, the whole game show thing is already kind of heavily baked into the experience. You know, as a whole, it doesn't like thematically fit yet because the map isn't finished. But it is there, and we have these storefronts, we have the vending machines that we can spend in-game currency on, and they all kind of blend to create this, 80s game show vibe. The cool thing about all of these things, though, right, the different ways you acquire loot, is that almost all of them make some sort of a sound signature. The game is really keen on risk and reward, constant risk and reward to push people to engage one another. So in 1BR, where you might hear some gunshots and then maybe go chase down those people, and that's pretty much it. Like there's really no other way you're forced into an engagement other than I'm happen to be looting here. Oh, the circle's closing here. Now you have all these instances where, oh wow, okay, there's somebody over at the prize door. They're opening the prize door. You have to stand on this door until the meter fills and then opens up and gives you a bunch of cash rewards and actual items. So that makes this huge, musical effect. Suddenly, you're exposing yourself, and maybe you want to do that to bait people in. And, obviously people are going to take advantage of that to try and hunt you down. It really does encourage a lot of fights, and it creates an early game that can be really fast. Unfortunately, right now, the mid-game and stuff kind of tapers off just because of the number of actual players in the game. That's something that will probably improve a little bit. Plus, the grid system, obviously needs some refinements and tweaking to start to close things in at a better pace. Now, the grid system is something I want to talk about because this is another example of them really trying to put a spin on the typical Battle Royale formula, where a lot of games use a circle that is... It's not like it's super predictable, but the circle's a circle, right? It doesn't give you a lot of variation. It's always going to close around one environment, and that's pretty much going to be it. This grid system does two really fantastic things. First and foremost, there is already a red zone in the form of multiple grids created in different patterns at the start of a match. That forces players to kind of split up where they can and can't jump. So you're never really able to jump to the exact same set of places every single time. Some places are going to be red zoned off. Sometimes the map is split down the middle, forcing people to make a decision, go to the left or the right. After the first, I think, minute or so clears, then it resets and we get a new grid pattern. And that'll start usually on the edge, and then sometimes it's in the form of an S pattern. It creates some interesting, basically maps within the map. It cuts the map up to create new environments. And as it closes, it does the same thing. So there's a little bit more risk and reward on what side of the map you go to, because maybe that side of the map gets cut off and now you've got to take a very long route around the red zone in order to get back to where you need to be for the final shootout, the showcase shootout in this case, the final circle, if you will. I like that. It creates an interesting level of replayability that isn't really there in other battle royales, and I think the better they can get at refining that grid system, the more valuable it's going to be to boosting the replayability of the experience and giving us, just more interesting layouts of the map to play in. I just really think it's an amazing idea in its infancy, and it can only get better the more they tweak it, the more they learn from the players, the more they look at feedback and telemetry, and just make it better and better and better. Now I want to talk about the in-game cash system, because this is, I think, kind of the final piece of the puzzle for how this game handles BR differently. In a typical BR, you find a lot of your equipment just kind of hanging out in the open world. In the case of Fortnite now, you can trade in resources for weapons at vending machines. And there's kind of something like that here. The idea is that there's a multitude of ways in which you can acquire equipment and gear. So you can open up the prize boxes I talked about. You can open up the prize doors. You can find stuff just laying out in the open. There are buildings that do have certain things, and if you've been playing long enough, you will start to already kind of pick up where certain things are. You can also, though, acquire cash. So cash can be found in a variety of different stores. You can, beat up the cash machines. You can beat up the cash registers, and you get money. And then you can use that money to buy gear and equipment from the vending machines. So there's the gear vendor, and then there's the Top Guns vendor, and those will have random weapons within them. Sometimes they'll be really high-level weapons that cost thousands of dollars. So you really got to farm, and you got to make sure you're getting those prize doors to get those big cash prizes to get that cash stack. Or, you could just go for some smaller thing. And maybe you decide at the start of your match, I'm going to go to the arcade every time, because if I jump to the arcade, they've got a lot of cash, and then I can run outside and buy whatever's on the vending door. There's usually at least something low level there. Maybe you buy a vest out of there. It creates a really interesting long-term flow within the game where you are actually kind of paying attention to how much money you have, because in a game like PUBG, in a game like Fortnite, you're really just looking to collect additional resources. So if I get in a firefight and I lose a lot of health and I have to heal back up, then I'm usually looking for more shield potions, more bandages. In this case, if I take damage to my vest or my armor, I'm not just looking to replace it, get lucky, pick it up off of a guy. I'm not in the middle of a fight saying to myself, oh crap, well, I just burned through my vest. Even though I healed, I've got no armor now. You know, I've got to go find something somewhere else. Instead, you can say, well, I've got the money. Let's find a gear slot, and I can, you know, I can go buy more gear, essentially. So the money has a large amount of value as you push towards the end game in a match of, or even middle game, you know, pretty much anything. Anytime you get in an engagement and you feel like, oh, I need to go replace this, if you've got the money, you can afford to do it. It can keep you in the game a little bit longer. So, you know, really gathering money as a resource is a valuable part of the meta, depending on how you choose to play. And I dig that. Now, the other interesting side of it is that you actually gain residual money, even if you lose, and even if you don't deposit any of your money into the ATM, you get some of that money each and every time you play. You're going to be rewarded with in-game currency every time you play, whether you win or lose. If you do win and you carry your cash all the way to the end, you'll get a big, nice double bonus on that. If you deposit some of your cash and lose, you'll get some of that money. Now, that means that you can go to an ATM in-game during the next match, because your wallet always starts out at 0 at the start of a match, and actually take money out of the ATM. So you could run right into a little store, see that there's a gun for $600, take out 6 $100 increments, which is time consuming, and again, it's risk versus reward, and then go buy that weapon. You could decide halfway through the match, while we're low on cash, but I've got $25,000 banked, and you can take that money out right then and there, again, at the risk of being identified, being spotted, to buy something. And I've already seen a lot of people, like, you know, they'll pretty much spend the start of the match taking out a lot of cash, you know, trying to make sure they're safe, and then buy like a Dragunov, you know, which is a really powerful weapon in the game right now. Definitely, obviously balancing issues. The game has been out for like literally 3 days, but I like that mechanic. At first, I didn't really know how I felt about it, but like 20 hours later, I'm like, no, I'm sold on the cash mechanic. You know, refinements, tweaks, balancing decisions. A lot of things are going to come into play to make it better, to make it just work better with the core gameplay loop, but I love it, man. It's just different. And having that multitude of options, like deciding every time I jump how I want to loot this time around, I love that. Plus, it allows you to adapt on the fly. So I might jump into the match and say, oh, okay, well, I was going to go to the arcade, but there's like 4 guys there. So instead, I'm going to roll out, and I know there's a prize package drop, you know, in this city on top of one of those buildings. I think I can get to that if I do some diving roll hardcore parkour here and get my way up there. Maybe I'll go to the skate park instead, because I know there's one package at the skate park. So a lot of the prize box drops right now, the big ones, they're consistent, but the contents are randomized. So there's always one like on top of the one ramp at the skate park, but you don't know what's inside of it. So I'm interested to see if they keep it that way, or if they start to also randomize the location of those. That's, you know, obviously going to be a long-term decision, but nonetheless, I like having that flexibility. I like the fact that the game has really good hit detection and like netcode already. It feels great for a game that's 5 months into development. This is better than PUBG by a long shot. That game struggles immensely with its tick rate, with its netcode. This game feels really satisfying in the shooting department, and that's one of those things when we talk about the future of this game that is really promising. I mean, number one, you don't have to spend any money on it, but number two, Boss Key, say what you will about the lack of success of Lawbreakers. Lawbreakers was an extremely well-developed game. I think it was very much an arena shooter more than anyone ever actually realized it was. A lot of people, you know, like, oh, it's a hero shooter, but it was an arena shooter at its core. A very high skill ceiling, massive skill cap potential arena shooter with hero shooter elements. And unfortunately, much like Quake Champions, these are just not games that people are looking to play. But the polish was there. The netcode is literally the best in the business. Battle Nonsense did a testing for Lawbreakers netcode, and it blew everyone else out of the frickin' water. They know how to make this kind of stuff at Boss Key. They have an amazing team when it comes to animations. They're a very talented group of industry vets, and I'm really excited to see what they can do. And a lot of them spent time working on games like Ghost Recon, Saints Row, and I think we see quite a little bit of Saints Row in here. And considering Zach Lowery, who worked on Saints Row for more than 10 years, is the creative lead on this project. He's the one who's doing creative director for it. You know, you can see where that inspiration for the over the top came, and I think that makes for just a really fast-paced and stupidly fun BR, man. That I can't seem to get enough of. I did not, you know, I figured it would be good, but 5 months. I've played a lot of games, alpha state, beta, you know, really early in development, and rarely do they have a core gameplay loop that is actually enjoyable, that actually makes you want to come back. And what impresses me more is the amount of fairness that the game has in 5 months. You know, there are bugs, but the number of them that have actually made me lose a gunfight or lose a match is very low. So shockingly low. You know, that's how well established the core gunplay is here. And you know, you might not like BR, you might not like the theme of it, you might not enjoy it when you play it, but considering it's free, I think it's absolutely worth giving it a go. Even if you don't like BR, you might find that like this is the BR that you didn't know. This is the game that makes you fall in love with BR. I have quite a few friends like that. You know, Iniquity, not a big BR guy, but he's like, you know, digs the game. He's not that great at BR, he'll admit that to himself, but he like likes what's going on with the game already, you know. So that's, I think that says a lot about the surprisingly on point early development state of Radical Heights. The last thing we can talk about is the game's microtransactions, because I know everybody wants to know about this. The game is completely free to play, no pay to win. There's a Founders Pack for $14.99 that only gives you access to some gems, which are the premium currency for buying skins, as well as some exclusive founder skins. Now, you can take that in-game money out of game. That's part of why you actually get the money. Again, another risk and reward element here. And then use that to buy cosmetics. Cosmetics that have to be unlocked and discovered out on the map. So there is no RNG loot box bullshit here. The only RNG is finding the clothing items that you want to buy, but you never have to pay for something without knowing what you're getting. So if you find, you know, the plaid shirt and decide you don't like it, then you just don't pay for it with your in-game currency. You don't have to waste your money on it. If you find the booty shorts and you decide that's exactly what I wanted, it's going to go well with my fanny pack, then you can spend the in-game currency on it. You're never asked to roll in-game currency that was given to you with your valuable time on a random crate like you are in PUBG. And in terms of just buying clothing items straight out with real-world currency, it is definitely a little bit cheaper than what we see in Fortnite. Like an entire outfit here, depending on what you put together, probably runs around $15, whereas some of the outfits in Fortnite are like $25, so on and so forth. So I think they're giving you options, and I think they've managed to capture, you know, probably one of the best monetization systems for a free-to-play or for a buy-to-play when it comes to cosmetics. It's just really well handled. I'm really impressed with it, and I think long-term that's going to give them a lot of flexibility to do some awesome things, and I hope that eventually, I'd love to see them open up the Steam Workshop and let people actually make clothing items like Warframe, you know, like DE does with Warframe. That would be killer. So there you have it, guys. 23 minutes of me talking about Radical Heights. It is obviously very, very early in development, 5 months. If you don't like seeing a game with gray boxes, with unfinished, you know, objects and animations in it, then you shouldn't touch this. But if you're interested in the early stages of development and you also want to be able to play something that has solid gameplay, this is a rare chance to be able to do both of those things. So if you don't like gray boxes, don't play it. You're going to hate it because there's gray boxes everywhere. If you don't care about that and you're all about the gameplay, and you don't mind embracing a little bit of jank every now and then while a game works its way through development, it doesn't cost you a dime, and I think it's absolutely worth checking out at the very least. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
You have been brought here for a purpose, the most important task of your life.